G7 summit. President Joe Biden joins world leaders for a face-to-face meeting in England. Royal family. First Lady Jill Biden enjoys a unique visit with the Duchess of Cambridge, Kate Middleton. Feast of Saint Anthony. People in Poland share the story of his apparition. And out of this world. With all the talk about UFO sightings, we seek the Catholic perspective. On EWTN News Nightly for Friday, June 11th, 2021. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. I'm Tracy Sable. The Group of Seven Summit is officially underway in the United Kingdom. U.S. President Joe Biden joined leaders from Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, and the UK at a seaside resort in southwest England. The central focus, turning the corner on the coronavirus pandemic. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports. Owen?
Tracy, good evening to you. President Joe Biden and other world leaders opened up 3 days of talks in the UK, facing immense global challenges, including sending out 1 billion vaccines to other countries, as well as recharging the world economy. And it will not be a walk on the beach.
On a sandy boardwalk, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson greets world leaders, including President Joe Biden, to open the Group of Seven summit.
Thank you very much.
The pandemic scuttled last year's meeting, but this time around they sat around a table under pressure to stop the pandemic and turn around the global economy.
The potential to generate many, many millions of high-wage, high-skill jobs.
But Prime Minister Johnson also cautioned.
But it is vital that we don't repeat the mistake of the last great crisis, the last great economic recession in 2008.
Also on the agenda, a global minimum tax of at least 15% on multinational corporations, meant to stop companies from using tax havens to avoid taxes. And on the president's upcoming meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin.
Mr. President, what's your message to Putin?
I'm sorry you have to deliver it.
Meanwhile, members of the royal family are also welcoming the first family to England. Kate, the Duchess of Cambridge, visited the school for 4- and 5-year-olds with First Lady Jill Biden.
But I wanted to just say a personal thank you and welcome to you, Dr. Biden. It's a huge honour to welcome you here in the United Kingdom.
They sat down with children in class to see what they were learning.
Early childhood education is so important to lay the foundation for all of our students.
And later, President Biden and other world leaders smiling as they're seated near Queen Elizabeth II, preparing for a group photo and reception.
Now, that reception hosted by the Queen was closed to most media. It was held at Cornwall's Eden Project that features the world's largest indoor rainforest. And the G7 summit continues this weekend. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
Our report says Senator Joe Manchin wants to support the pro-life Hyde Amendment. According to a story today in Bloomberg, the West Virginia Democrat said, quote, "I'm going to support Hyde in every way possible." President Joe Biden has repeatedly said that he will repeal the amendment, which bans federal funds from being used for abortion except in cases of rape or incest. Joining us now is Vince Coglianese, Editorial Director at the Daily Caller and the host of the Vince Coglianese Show on WMAL Radio. Vince, welcome back. Always great to see you. Senator Manchin says that he will support the pro-life Hyde Amendment in every way possible. That said, what can he do? And do you think it would be enough to stop the efforts to repeal it?
Well, I think it's absolutely enough to have one senator out of the 50 senators who caucus with the Democrats saying that they are going to fight to defend taxpayers from having to be forcibly involved in paying for abortions in the United States. The Hyde Amendment, as your viewers know, keep taxpayer funding from going into abortion. And what Joe Manchin said this week is gigantic. He said he is not going to be a vote to support any spending bill that allows for your taxpayer money to be spent on abortions in the United States. So now what that means is you essentially have 51 senators, at least, the Republicans, and one Democrat, Joe Manchin, who are saying enough. We're not spending this money on abortions. Now, again, that is a slim margin, and it's very much, the kind of thing that could disappear at any moment. But Joe Manchin holding strong, I think that this is a monumental win for pro-life Americans who are looking to keep their taxpayer money from contributing to abortions. Joe Manchin standing up for them this week.
Vice President Kamala Harris, as you know, she just returned from her trip to Central America. I'd like to get your thoughts on how that trip went. It seems like she's been receiving, that is, quite a bit of criticism from both Democrats and Republicans.
Yeah, I try to be nice about this, but it was a disaster. That's the truth, because Kamala Harris, the vice president, has been asked a question over and over and over again, even before she went on this trip. Will you go to the southern border of the United States? The reason that question matters is because President Biden tasked her with stopping the border crisis. Now, if you were to ask the vice president's office what her mission is, it is to stem the tide by addressing the, quote, root causes. That means avoiding the border entirely, in her mind, and going instead to Central America to try and get people to stop immigrating illegally north into the United States. And the way to do that, well, the Biden administration thinks that you just have to bring bags of cash down there. You just bring a lot more money down to Central America, and it will stop that migration. And that's just never been the case. Both the Washington Post and the New York Times ran stories this week looking back at the history of the amount of money that we've put into Central America and have discovered it doesn't stop immigration. Things have only gotten worse on our southern border. And this week, Kamala Harris goes down there, gives a series of mixed messages, tells people not to come, although over 60% of the family units that arrive on our border are allowed into the United States by the Biden administration. So that's a mixed message. And then every time she's asked repeatedly whether or not she's going to visit the southern border, she kept insisting she's already been to the border. She doesn't know why she needs to go to the border. She might go to the border at some point. And she, got, I think, more and more annoyed as the trip went along, that she was being asked that question. In PR terms, it was a disaster. And in real terms, it did nothing to stop the crisis.
Vince, we have about a minute left, but I want to stick to the border right here. It seems Texas has really kind of had enough and is taking matters into its own hands and now plans to build their own border wall. What do you think that says about how the Biden administration has been handling the situation?
Well, it says that the border states are absolutely overwhelmed and they are desperate for help that they are not getting from the Biden administration. For instance, in Texas specifically, not only are they trying to put walls up because the federal government won't do that job, they are also very heavily taxed in terms of their resources. You have police officers in the state of Texas who are having to assist Border Patrol in the mission of securing the border. You've got all sorts of expenses that the state of Texas is taking on. All the border states are. And in fact, Governor Greg Abbott is trying to bill the federal government for all of the money that they're having to spend that they never predicted they would have to spend in the first place, because they couldn't have predicted the crisis that we're now seeing. Things are out of control, and those border states need help, and every state in the country is going to need help as more and more illegal immigrants make their way into the United States and then are spread out everywhere. Things are just completely out of control with no end in sight.
Well, Vince, unfortunately, we have to leave it right there. Thanks so much for weighing in. Vince Coglianese, Editorial Director at the Daily Caller. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Well, the UN Human Rights Chief warns about a military buildup in eastern areas of Myanmar, also known as Burma. Credible reports say security forces have shelled civilian homes and churches, killing at least 860 people, forcing more than 100,000 to flee. China intends to vaccinate 80% of its population against coronavirus, including children, by the end of this year.
国药中生北京所和北京科兴中维公司呢，
With 1.4 billion people, China's goal will be a challenge to attain. Its two vaccines now have extended authorization to inoculate those from ages 3 to 17. The inclusion of children reflects concern about an asymptomatic transmission. In Australia, the city of Melbourne is emerging from its fourth lockdown with no new coronavirus cases reported today.
That is good news, and it's news I know everyone in Victoria wanted to hear. So let's take a moment to catch a breath just for a moment. Thank the many thousands of staff who are out there
Health officials are still monitoring 75 active COVID-19 cases. Some travel restrictions will remain for Melbourne's 5 million residents. The Holy Father approved a mandate to regulate the duration of the leadership within international lay associations. These provisions are intended to ensure that authority in those associations should be a service to communion and to avoid the risk of personalism and abuses. The Institute for Religious Works, also known as the Vatican Bank, announced today it recorded a net profit of $44 million in 2020. That is significant, considering the Holy See lost much of its income from the Vatican museums, which were closed for a large part of the year due to the pandemic. Pope Francis has named a new prefect of the Vatican Congregation for the Clergy. Bishop Lazarus Yu Hwangsik is from South Korea. He is the first from that nation to lead a Vatican congregation. Bishop Yu succeeds Cardinal Beniamino Stella in oversight for diocesan priests and deacons globally. His appointment reflects Pope Francis's priority for the Church in Asia. The Pontifical University of St. Thomas Aquinas in Rome has named its first ever American rector. Father Thomas Joseph White, a Dominican priest who appeared many times on EWTN, has taught at the university, commonly known as the Angelicum, since 2018. He will start as rector in September and told Catholic News Agency that he is deeply honored with the opportunity to serve the whole church and advance the mission of the Dominican order. Coming up, church in Germany. What happens now that the Holy Father rejected a cardinal's resignation? And he is considered a doctor of the church. Why Saint Anthony is especially revered in Poland. As we reported yesterday, Pope Francis has refused to accept the resignation of an influential leader in the German church. Cardinal Reinhard Marx will remain in his role as Archbishop of Munich and Freising. Joining us now for analysis is A.C. Wimmer, editor-in-chief of Catholic News Agency Deutsch. A.C., great to see you as always. So tell us, what has been the reaction in Germany in regards to the news about Cardinal Marx?
It was exciting for everyone to get this news, and apparently the lines were crossing across the camps. Some people uttered relief, in particular one auxiliary bishop in the Archdiocese of Munich, but others found very scathing criticism. In particular, Cardinal Gerhard Ludwig Müller, himself a former German bishop and, of course, as we know, former prefect of the Congregational Doctrine for the Faith. He said in an interview with a German magazine that was published today that he was surprised the decision was dragged onto a theatrical stage, and that God's people were turned into an audience that should either applaud or boo. This contradicts the meaning of a spiritual office for the salvation of the people. On a more anecdotal level, though, Tracy, I must say that here in the Archdiocese of Munich and Freising, a number of priests, a number of people working for the church have also issued what I think is a pretty serious concern that Cardinal Marx himself has in fact voiced, namely the question of how, after this letter, one can go back to working within the Archdiocese, both as the bishop, the cardinal, and for the people working with him to tend to the flock or shepherd the sheep, as Pope Francis himself has in fact written in the letter.
And was it a surprise that the Holy Father didn't accept the resignation? Were people surprised?
I think a couple of us were banking on this might possibly be happening, myself included, to be honest, and the Bishop of Eichstätt, another Bavarian diocese, has said as much, but we must be the minority. To be frank, I think Cardinal Marx himself sounded absolutely flabbergasted when you look closely at the statement that he produced within a few hours of finding out that he was expected to continue serving as Archbishop, which of course he said he was prepared to do, but that he could not return back to just doing what he's done so far, and that this was going to constitute a great challenge for him. And I think that is inarguably what everyone is expecting this is going to be, not just with a view to how you work as an archbishop, but also given that Cardinal Marx stands accused of very serious accusations of covering up sex abuse.
I see some other news coming out of Germany that I want to talk about. The 3 Catholics in Germany that have submitted a document to the Vatican asking the church, if the church in the country that is in schism. What more can you tell us about that and what that document says?
It's a really interesting form to choose. Of course, it's a dubium, which expects a response of either yes or no from the Congregation of the Doctrine of the Faith, something some of our viewers might remember. Amoris Laetitia triggered 4 cardinals to produce a number of dubia that so far haven't been answered. But more recently also, on the question of blessing homosexual unions, where the Congregation of the Doctrine of the Faith issued a clear no with an explanatory note. The 3 Catholics, lay Catholics, we've spoken to one of them for CNA Deutsch, and CNA has reported on it today, issue a lot of careful wording around what they've done. They understand that they might not even receive a response. However, they raise concerns, having served as lay ministers for years in their parishes, about something brewing for many years now that has come to the fore and that constitutes more or less a de facto schism. And what they're trying to hope to do is not so much produce tensions, but find a way to send out a signal, an alarm signal, if you like, perhaps even a call for help, saying, please, Vatican, help us, Rome, help us, Pope Francis, please intervene, help us get things back on the straight path, as it were.
AC, about a minute left or so, but I want to ask you anything else that you have your eye on in Germany that we should know about?
I think the really crucial point in time will be this summer and then early fall, autumn, because we're going to see 2 things, Tracy. Firstly, we're going to see, arguably, we're not even sure whether we will see, but it's been announced that the investigation into sexual abuse or covering up sexual abuse, potentially in the Archdiocese of Munich at Freising, might be published. There's another report that's underway for the Diocese of Trier, where those serious accusations against Cardinal Marx, who was bishop there during his time there, were raised. And those timings will then coincide or come just before the official synodal way draws to conclusion. And it somehow has to find a way of dealing with these matters that we've discussed today and working and finding ways to switch gears and coming together with the global, the universal church's synodal process that the Holy Father has announced, which is due to start in October. It'll be fascinating.
Well, AC, thank you so much for your time. Always great speaking with you. AC Wimmer, Editor-in-Chief of Catholic News Agency Deutsch. Thanks again.
Thank you. Likewise.
On this Sunday, June 13th, in addition to the 11th Sunday in Ordinary Time, the Church commemorates Saint Anthony of Padua. EWTN News Rome correspondent Colm Flynn brings us the story of the only apparition of the saint in Poland.
Saint Anthony of Padua, a Franciscan friar and a doctor of the Church, was born and raised in Lisbon, Portugal. And after joining the Franciscan order, he moved to Padua, Italy, where he worked and spent the last years of his life. Though Saint Anthony is venerated worldwide, there is only one place where he has appeared. It happened here, in a tiny village located in western Poland, called Radysnica. Father Teofil Kazarniak, provincial minister of the Order of Friars Minor, shares the story.
In 1664, 8th of May, a special event took place in this small village. Simon the Weaver had an apparition, had a vision of Saint Anthony, and Saint Anthony gave him some messages. One of them was the request of constructing a shrine on a nearby hill. Also, one of the promises of Saint Anthony was that whoever comes to this place, because he appeared near the water source, that whoever will clean his wounds or drink this water with faith will be given the graces.
The news of the miraculous water spread all over the country, and soon after, the shrine of Saint Anthony was erected next to the lake.
And it was the first confirmed apparitions of Saint Anthony in the world. At the moment, today, you can see beautiful shrine with the title of Basilic, where the picture of Saint Anthony reigns and the pilgrims come and have graces through the intercessions of Saint Anthony.
On the feast of Saint Anthony, pilgrims gather for a procession with the Blessed Sacrament and a statue of Saint Anthony. The fame of the miraculous shrine of Saint Anthony eventually reached the Vatican, and in 2015, Pope Francis granted it the title of a minor basilica.
We invite every pilgrim, everyone who needs help from God, through the intercession of Saint Anthony, who is a big, big saint in heaven, to come and visit Radecznica, to come and pray, to come and become one of the pilgrims in this holy place.
In Rome, Colm Flynn, EWTN News Nightly.
Up next, inside the solar system, China releases new images of Mars. And unidentified flying objects, what our faith teaches us about life beyond our planet. China's space agency has released new images from its first Mars mission. As the second country to reach the red planet, China's rover landed on May 23rd for a 3-month mission. Next week, China's ambitious space program will send a crew to its new space station. And finally tonight, it may sound out of this world, but it's true. The U.S. government is analyzing reports of unidentified flying objects. The Pentagon is reviewing data collected in recent years, though at this point, no definitive explanation has been given. Correspondent Mark Irons reports.
It's rotating. The unexplained captured for all to see. It's no joke.
Oh my gosh, dude.
The U.S. government is now taking a hard look at UFOs.
We take all incursions into our operating spaces seriously.
Reports with visual backup of objects flying in U.S. airspace at seemingly inexplicable speeds or trajectories.
These were U.S. military or intelligence reports. These were not civilian reports.
Luis Elizondo, the former head of the Pentagon's Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, says what we're seeing are real objects spotted by military pilots.
Their observations were being backed up by gun camera footage and electro-optical devices, and further backed up by radar.
The director of NASA is among those who can't seem to put a name on it.
We don't know if it's extraterrestrial. We don't know if it's an enemy. We don't know if it's an optical phenomenon.
A report from the Pentagon on these unidentified flying objects is expected to land right behind me in the hands of Congress any day now, as everyone looks for some answers. Back in December, lawmakers gave defense and intelligence officials a June deadline to provide an unclassified report revealing the government's knowledge of unidentified aerial phenomena, otherwise known as UFOs.
Is there something out there that we don't know?
All of this has grabbed the attention of Joel Arneo. The former Air Force officer in flight test development says the government may know more than it's letting on.
I mean, there's a lot of top secret work that goes out there in the black world within the Pentagon, and that may be what we're seeing.
But Elizondo says it's not U.S. secret technology.
It is either foreign adversarial technology, or it is something completely and totally different, an entirely different paradigm.
Jonathan Lunine is the chair of the Department of Astronomy at Cornell University. He's also the vice president of the Society of Catholic Scientists. Lunine is urging caution before making out-of-this-world assumptions.
As a scientist, I would, caution everyone not to go to the most extraordinary explanation, which is, a tendency that people have because we like excitement in our lives.
Lunine says more data would need to be collected. But beyond these recent sightings, the possibility of life beyond Earth has been a real topic considered for centuries by both science and faith. Lunine says microbial life doesn't seem out of the question, and it would show the diversity in God's creation.
Why shouldn't that diversity extend to other worlds? We know it extends back in time. We know there are species and creatures that no longer exist today, but once existed. And so, why should that not be the case elsewhere?
And while answers are sought to those big universal questions, Lunine says we can't rely on science alone.
But that's only one part of reality. I mean, the other part of reality, as my faith informs me, is spiritual, is immaterial, is divine.
Mark Irons, EWTN News Nightly.
Pretty incredible. And we thank you for watching tonight. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Tracy Sable. Good night and God bless.